Laura, a young investigative journalist, rented an isolated house at the edge of a dense forest. The place, built in the 1800s, carried a grim reputation. Whispers of disappearances and strange, unexplainable noises haunted its legacy. She hoped the eerie solitude would help her research and write about the local legends. The first night was suffocatingly silent. The absence of sound was more unsettling than any noise could have been. The wind whispered through the tall, skeletal trees, and shadows seemed to writhe unnaturally in the dim moonlight. She unpacked her things and settled into the cramped study, surrounded by creaking walls and the faint scent of mildew. On her desk lay old records she had borrowed from the town library, chronicling the disappearances of people who had ventured too close to the forest. As she pored over the documents, a faint tapping echoed through the house. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. Just the house settling, she muttered to herself, trying to ignore the growing dread clawing at her chest. But the tapping grew louder, more deliberate, as if someone, or something, was inside. Summoning her courage, she followed the sound to the hallway. The dim bulb flickered as she approached the door to the basement. The tapping stopped abruptly. She hesitated before opening the door. A chilling draft greeted her, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of decay. When she shone her flashlight down the staircase, her heart nearly stopped. A trail of wet, muddy footprints led deeper into the darkness. Laura shut the basement door, locking it with trembling hands. She backed away, her mind racing. There was no way someone could have entered the house without her noticing. The night stretched on agonizingly. Laura sat on the couch with a knife in one hand and her phone in the other, but no cell service reached this far into the wilderness. At around 3 a.m., the tapping returned, but this time, it came from multiple directions, beneath the floorboards, the walls, and even the ceiling. It was as if the house itself was alive. Desperate for answers, she grabbed her flashlight and headed outside. The icy air bit at her skin as she circled the house. The forest loomed like a living entity, its twisted branches resembling skeletal arms. On the frosted ground, she noticed more footprints, not just leading away from the house, but circling it repeatedly. Some were human, others weren't. They were larger, clawed, and impossibly deep. As she stood frozen in terror, a low, guttural growl rumbled from the tree line. Two glowing eyes pierced the darkness, locking onto her. The creature was massive, its outline obscured by the shadows. Without thinking, Laura ran back inside and slammed the door shut. The growling turned into an ear-piercing shriek that shook the walls. By dawn, the forest seemed deceptively calm, but Laura knew better. She decided to drive back to town, but her car wouldn't start. The hood revealed shredded wires and claw marks, as though something had deliberately sabotaged her escape. With no other choice, she returned to the house and tried to distract herself by reviewing her notes. Among the stories of disappearances, one account stood out, a diary from the last known resident of the house. The entries described a recurring nightmare, waking up to find shadowy figures standing at the edge of the bed, whispering incomprehensibly. The final entry read, "They're not just dreams. They're waiting for me to let my guard down. The forest isn't just haunted, it's alive, and it's hungry." That night, Laura set up her camera, hoping to capture any evidence of what was tormenting her. Exhaustion eventually overcame her, and she fell into a restless sleep. When she woke, the camera was on the floor, its lens shattered. Scrawled on the wall in muddy handprints were the words, "You're already OURS." Terrified but determined, Laura ventured into the basement. She needed to know what was beneath the house. The footprints from the previous night were gone, but the air was thick with an oppressive energy. The basement stretched deeper than it should have, a maze of tunnels, carved into the earth. The walls were damp, and the stench of rot was overwhelming. As she descended, she found relics of the past, old toys, broken furniture, and personal belongings that must have belonged to the previous residents. At the end of the tunnel, she stumbled upon a massive wooden door etched with strange symbols. Whispers echoed faintly, as though dozens of voices were trapped behind it. She hesitated but pushed the door open. Inside was a cavernous space lit by a faint, unnatural glow. In the center stood an altar surrounded by skeletal remains, their faces frozen in expressions of terror. The whispers intensified, and shadowy figures emerged from the walls, their forms shifting and writhing like smoke. They moved closer, their hollow eyes fixed on her. Laura fled the basement, her heart pounding as the shadows pursued her. She bolted into the forest, hoping to lose them among the trees. But the forest was alive. The branches reached for her like claws, and the ground shifted beneath her feet. The whispers followed, growing louder and more insistent. She stumbled into a clearing and saw it, the creature from the night before. It towered over her, its body a grotesque amalgamation of flesh, bark, and bone. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its maw opened to reveal rows of jagged teeth. Before she could scream, the creature lunged. She narrowly avoided its grasp and ran deeper into the woods, her lungs burning. She reached a cliff overlooking the house. From this vantage point, she saw something horrifying. The forest wasn't just surrounding the house, it was growing out of it. The roots of the trees were intertwined with the walls, and shadowy figures moved freely between the two. Realizing escape was impossible, Laura returned to the house, determined to destroy it. She doused the walls in gasoline she found in the shed and lit a match. The fire spread quickly, consuming the wooden structure. But as the flames grew, so did the whispers. The shadowy figures shrieked, their forms twisting in agony. The creature emerged from the forest, its roar shaking the earth. It reached for Laura, but the collapsing house dragged it into the flames. For a moment, there was silence. Then the ground beneath her feet gave way. Laura awoke in total darkness. The whispers were louder now, surrounding her. She realized she wasn't in the house or the forest. She was beneath it, trapped in the tunnels, just like the others before her. The shadows closed in, and the last thing she saw was the faint glow of the altar, its light flickering like a heartbeat. The forest had claimed her, as it always did.